Good afternoon. This is Larry DeYoung. I have created a website, LarryThePatriot.com. I wanted to share a little bit about myself and how it was that I came to write this website and to write several books. I'm an evangelical Christian, retired. I am from Springdale, Arkansas, Southern Baptist. I have been here for the last few years in retirement, but following politics very closely. I got my master's degree in government policy from Regent University, Pat Robertson, over there in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And my thesis was the community-based drug addiction prevention. So I've always been interested in the idea of preventing things from getting worse. And drug addiction prevention, of course, was part of that. Today, I am talking about what I'm doing as far as writing these books to prevent the crisis of America concerning the depression of our young people. I spent 10 years on the mission field with Youth with a Mission. I spent 5 years amongst the U.S. Army in West Germany, where I ministered in Christian coffee houses and sold Christian books and recorded audio tapes and did all kinds of things for the U.S. military up until shortly before the wall came down in 1989. I also spent 5 years in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill, ministering to the people on the Hill. At the end of my career, I spent 19 years in the newspaper business and was involved with a lot of ideas that were affecting the culture. During the last 30 years, I have studied the culture war against American Christianity. I have known since the 80s that America was going down a very bad path and that we needed to stop it. One of the people that I read a lot was Dr. Francis Schaeffer. I'm sure many of you know of Dr. Schaeffer. He wrote, 10 books maybe. During the 70s and 80s, he was a prophet, warning the evangelical church, we got to wake up. And some Christians did wake up, fortunately, but a lot of them didn't. A lot of them just said, this apologetics, this is not important. And unfortunately, this has led to a disastrous result in our culture today and in the church. I'm sad to say that if you think evangelical Christianity is in a good state, you have no idea what's going on. If Francis Schaeffer were here today, he would be screaming at the top of his lungs. Well, we do have people who are screaming at the top of their lungs, like Eric Metaxas, Dr. George Barna, and others, who are warning the evangelical church. But sadly, most of the evangelical church is still asleep. Now, I retired in the fall of 2016, just a few months before Trump won the first election. So I was involved in some of the local campaigning and so forth. But I knew that this election of Donald Trump in 2016 could be a turning point for the country. And lo and behold, of course, all the knives came out and all the lawsuits and all the Russia hoax and all the other things that have gone on during the 4 years that he was in office was absolutely unbelievable. Anybody who had any eyes could see that we had a full-scale war going on. Unfortunately, a lot of evangelicals have still hidden in their back room and closed the door and curled up in the corner in the fetal position. And many of our pastors are exactly in that place. They have crawled up in the corner and said, don't tell me anything. I don't want to know. So the 30 Years' War was now out in the open in 2015 as Trump was running for office, 16, 17, 18, 19, then the 20 election, and then COVID. When the 20 election was stolen by the Democrats, I knew that the war had gone to a whole new level, and there was no way that this is going to end good. And so the attacks on Trump continued even during Biden's time. And of course, Biden totally reversed everything that Trump had done. And so the whole issue of the culture was now in big trouble because the Democrats were destroying everything. The media was going along with all this massive propaganda program to lie and lie and lie. Well, why didn't our pastors resist these lies about COVID? Well, it all goes back to 100 years of losing of our courage. Our pastors and our men have lost their courage. Some historical reasons, some cultural reasons, and some church history reasons. Feminism was a big part of it. Men were under attack with feminism. And so the men finally just became pacified and didn't want to be criticized because of the toxic masculinity ideology that was out there. And so our pastors and our men just decided to keep their mouths shut. And so the enemy just took over and nobody was standing up. I also noticed that there was no preaching about repentance and sin in the mega churches, evangelical mega churches. We had the easy believe gospel was being preached, and a lot of people really weren't getting saved. Oh, they joined the church and they got dunked, but their lives didn't change. Meanwhile, our young people were suffering a lot of bad ideas, and the church was not addressing those ideas in the culture, namely in the universities. And so as a result, our young people left the church, became prodigals, and now we have this massive problem of prodigals who are depressed, suicidal, and every week we are praying for our children and our grandchildren because they are away from the church and away from God. Now, there is a new book that came out a couple of years ago called The Great Dechurching, which talks about the prodigals and why they left and how many of them want to come back. So that's very encouraging. We must not give up. Before I retired, I took 5 years of writer's classes every month for 5 years with the intention of eventually being able to do some writing. However, at the time, my job was very demanding, about 55 hours a week, and I had no time or energy to write. So it was only after I retired that I was able to spend some time. During the time of COVID, I was able to read many books and listen to endless podcasts to find out the latest information about what was going on in the culture. And so I became very educated on the things that were happening that were affecting our young people and affecting our culture itself and affecting the evangelical church even. Then on July 4th, 2023, I was at the fireworks and I was praying, Lord, how many more 4th of Julys are we going to have? If Donald Trump does not win in November of 24, we may not have any more freedoms because the Biden administration was destroying every freedom we could possibly imagine. At the time that I was working with the podcasting and reading of books, I felt God wanted me to start doing some writing to put some of my ideas into print. And so I began to type on my computer, and it was an absolutely incredible experience. I was able to literally type 100 pages in a very short time period because the words were coming into my mind faster than I could possibly type them. It was an incredible experience. And I began to realize that God had given me some things to say. And of course, I needed to do a whole lot more of research. But the things that I put down at the beginning were very, very important concepts. At that same time, I read a new book, Letter to the American Church by Eric Metaxas. In that book, he is warning the evangelical church that we are repeating the same mistakes that the Christians were making in Nazi Germany. They were not standing against Hitler, and they were covering up their ears as the railroad cars went by the church, and they were singing their hymns as the Jews were going to the death camps. And that's exactly what we're doing today. Our pastors are covering their ears while the culture is blowing up. And brothers and sisters, if this does not change, the church is done and America's done. We're finished. There's no more America. Your kids and your grandkids and your great-grandkids are soon going to be entering into hell. Now, I say hell, I mean hell. The New World Order plans on having one world government in 2030. And that is their plan. The question is, are we going to resist, or are we just going to succumb to one world government and the mark of the beast? Because that's what's coming. Now, many people are talking about prophecy and, the nation of Israel and all the things that are happening. But let me tell you, what's coming is the fulfillment of Revelation here in America as the mark of the beast and all of this takes place. We got to get our heads out of the sand and realize we are in the end times and the future is not going to be good. Now, President Trump is trying to make America great again. But unless the evangelical church dramatically gets involved in reaching our young people in their depressed state, they are going to vote for socialism in 2032. I need you to understand, 2032 is the turning point for America. If our young people vote for socialism, America is finished. The future for your grandkids and your great-grandkids is finished. There is no future. If we do not fight, starting right now, then it's all over. And unfortunately, God is going to hold the evangelical church accountable, especially our pastors, our leaders, our seminaries, etc. God is going to hold them accountable because we, the evangelical church, are the only ones with the spiritual authority to stand against evil. The woke church, the leftist church, they no longer believe the Bible. They have rejected the scriptures. They've reinterpreted everything. They have no spiritual power. As a matter of fact, they're working with the leftists. So that's our problem. We have prodigals. We have cowardly pastors. But then the ultimate was when I discovered the state of our young people with the depression and suicides. Gen Z is in a very bad state. Millennials are as well, but Gen Zs are especially bad. 13% of young Gen Z women attempted suicide in 2021. 7% of young men attempted suicide in 2021. Think about that for a minute. 13% and 7% of our young people tried to kill themselves in 1 year. We are in trouble. And these same depressed, suicidal young people believe from the university that the only hope is socialism in 2023. I'm sorry, 2022 and 32. So our young people believe that 2032 and the voting for socialism is going to be the only solution. Unfortunately, they are going to be 55% of the voting block. So if we cannot lower that depressed group down to less than 50%, we will be outvoted and socialism will be put into practice. So we have 6 years for the evangelical church to get its act together and reach out to our youth with the real power of the gospel, repentance, faith, and lordship, discipleship, none of this easy believe stuff. As a result of all this that I have explained, I am now in the process of getting ready to publish 3 books. I started out thinking I was going to make 1 book. However, it has now been broken up into 3 books. The first book is going to be to our young people who are depressed and suicidal. This book shows 30 forces in our culture that have made them depressed. It goes all the way back to what they learned in the university, the lack of a biblical worldview, the diet that they're eating, the food, technology. There's many things that are all affecting the depression of our young people. Many of these things are not well known. So my book actually is going outside of psychology literature to expose some of the many reasons that the psychology professions will not deal with. So my book is very unique for our young people. The second book is The Youth Mental Health Crisis and What the Evangelical Church Can Do. This book will deal with the evangelical pastors and why it is that they lost their courage, and also why the men in the pew have lost their courage, and why the men in society have lost their courage. Part of this goes back to feminism, as you probably would guess. Feminism has destroyed the courage of our men, and so our men have given up on fighting for what's right. And even feminism is within the church, and many pastors are being controlled by boisterous, loud-speaking women who are sending hate emails to the pastor if they dare talk about this or dare talk about that. Many of our pastors are totally submitted to the women and what they say to them. We have a problem, brothers and sisters. We have a big problem. And there needs to be not only repentance over the lack of courage by the men, but repentance by our women over feminism. Feminism in the church has dramatically helped to destroy the courage of our pastors. Lastly, the third book is about what's going to happen between 2025 and 2032. This book is only partially done at the moment, but this book will enable everybody to understand what we have to face. We cannot act like everything is honky-dory because it isn't. We are facing hell in the next 7 years. And if we do not treat it as such, and if we do not step forward in faith, confidence, and courage to stand against evil, then we're done. We're done. The church is done. America's done. Christianity in America is done. And it will be held to pay for our children, our grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren. So if you actually say you love your children and grandchildren, there is no way that you can stay out of this battle, because your children and grandchildren are going to curse your generation because you did not stand up for them and help them have a better future. So I trust by now you understand the importance of what this is all about, and I look forward to you visiting my website at larrythepatriot.com. God bless you, and please continue to follow me on my website, larrythepatriot.com. Please pray for America. Pray that I will find a publisher and a co-author for my books. God bless.